So in this video, we're going to look at a couple ways of painting clouds using Photoshop. So first of all, when painting the sky, keep in mind that the sky close to the horizon is going to be lighter and less saturated than the sky higher up, which will be darker and more saturated. Now, when you're dealing with typical puffy clouds, the easiest way to do them is to sample your lightest sky color and then move diagonally a little bit towards the white corner so that you're a little brighter than that color. Now you can use a lot of different types of brushes to make clouds, but one easy way to make a kind of neat cloud brush is to just start with a default soft-edged brush, increase the scattering a little bit, and decrease the spacing so that you kind of get an uneven, bumpy line. Then when you paint with it, you'll get sort of a nice fluffy cloud effect just from making a straight line. Keep the opacity low, maybe between 30 and 50, and as you overlap, you'll create these interesting cloud effects. Remember to put your clouds on a separate layer from your sky. I forgot to do that, and now it means I can't really erase any parts of those clouds without wrecking the sky. I'm just going to quickly sketch in a new cloud here on a separate layer. And so if you go to the eraser tool and with a really low opacity, paint over the bottom of the cloud, you can make it look like the bottom is more in shadow by having the darker sky show through. It's also important to remember that your clouds are going to be hit by your light, so you have to know what direction your light's coming from. And you're going to take a slightly closer to white color, so again move diagonally towards the white, a smaller brush, and highlight the edge of the cloud that is closest to your light source. So you then want to blend the bottom of that highlight into the rest of the cloud, and you can do this in a number of ways with the eraser tool, the blur tool, or just by sampling some of the cloud color and painting over that bottom edge with a low opacity brush. It's also effective to take some of your darker sky color and move diagonally down towards black just a little bit, and then paint some of that on the bottom side of the cloud where there would be shadows cast.
Step number 2 is to remember that clouds are 3D volumes. So clouds are three-dimensional shapes, and I think this is something that a lot of people struggle with when it comes to painting clouds. So I see a lot of people do stuff like in the first example where they kind of treat it as like a flat object where they just put, highlights on the top and shadows on the bottom and call that done, when really clouds have like a lot of different smaller pieces that are kind of stuck together, and usually they'll have like a big main kind of shape with a lot of other little shapes protruding out of that and attached onto it. But yeah, it is important to keep in mind that they have like depth and height and shape and volume and stuff. So when you're coloring them and rendering them, you want to make sure to take that into account.
This method uses the same kind of scattered brush we did on the last one, but instead now you just paint the top lit part of the clouds and then use the blur tool to blend softly into the blue of the sky. Do most of your blurring on the bottom of the cloud where it's darker and less on the top. And as long as you keep your clouds on a separate layer, you can move them, resize them, copy them, and do anything else you need to do. And just like the last technique, you add some brighter highlights to the top edges and some blue sky color to the bottom of the clouds. There's one more method for making clouds, and that's using something called stamps. Now, stamps are a particular kind of paintbrush. If you follow the link to the cloud brushes, you can download them the same way we did the hairbrushes. So when you load those cloud brushes into your brush tool, you'll notice that they don't really look right when you just try to paint with them the way you would a normal brush. That's because they're meant to be used as stamps. Stamps are meant to be clicked on once. So you click once to kind of stamp them onto your image. And you notice that this works here with the clouds. You can pick the size that you want, click once, and it creates an instant cloud for you. Stamps can save you an awful lot of time, but they're a little bit more limiting than regular brushes because you can only get the effect that the stamp gives you. You can click several times in the same spot to make the cloud more opaque. Besides being a little bit limiting, it's also tricky to use stamps when you're mixing painterly effects and photographic effects. These cloud brushes are obviously taken directly from photographs, and if you inserted them into a painting that was otherwise a very painterly style, they wouldn't look right. So you have to be careful about how you use them. It's possible to use them as a base and then do a little bit of painting over top of them to make them look less photographic. This is a pretty good example of that, taking a stamp, using a smudge tool on the edges a little bit, and then just painting over top here and there. By the end of it, it looks like something that could blend into a painting quite well. Okay, so I think you're pretty well informed about clouds now. You can go ahead and add clouds to your landscape painting if you wish.